Welcome to today's special talk, a rare journey through shadows, loyalty, and light of Il Doge, a portrait of redemption. Presented by BC Minorities for Film and TV Society in collaboration with Her Stories Untold, Her Journey Empowerment Society. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Tracy, and I'm the Vice President and co-founder of BC Minorities for Film and TV Society. We are based in British Columbia. BC MFTS is dedicated to fostering inclusion in the film and TV industry. Since 2018, we have provided mentorship and training to underrepresented creators from BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, disabled and immigrant communities. We're always seeking meaningful ways to support diverse stories that deserve to be seen and heard. Our mission is to build a bridge for diversity, not just within BC, but globally, because diversity doesn't end in our borders. From the heart of BC, we bring our stories, voices, and values to the world. And our initiatives include short film mentorship, cross-cultural partnerships, and social impact microgrants. So do explore our website, www.filmminorities.com, when you get a chance and find out what's happening. And I also want to share that I am the founder of Her Stories Untold, a global initiative dedicated to sharing empowering and inspiring stories of women and men from all walks of life. It is proudly in association with Her Journey Empowerment Society, a registered nonprofit organization that is dedicated to uplifting and in celebrating the diverse journeys and stories of individuals around the globe. My initiative began as a way to bring visibility to the incredible journeys that these individuals have taken to become whom they are today. And because so many of the stories go untold, not because they're not significant, but because, often themselves, they don't realize the power and the importance of their experiences. So again, the mission is to uplift, empower, and inspire globally. If you feel that you have a story to share, I invite you to visit www.herstoriesuntold.com. And before we dive into today's rare special talk, I want to acknowledge that the land on which I live and work is the traditional and unceded territory of the Coquitlam Nation and lies within the shared territories of the Tile, Watuit, Kasiem, Musqueam, Squamish, KK, Stolo First Nations. And very importantly, today is Father's Day in Canada, June 15th, Sunday. I want to honor the quiet strength and enduring sacrifices and the unconditional love of fathers and father figures around the world. Father's Day isn't just a celebration. It is really a recognition of presence, resilience, and often unspoken impact of men who choose to show up as we gather today. So let's reflect on what it truly means to lead with strength, heart, and legacy. With this, I welcome our very special guest here today. So this is Giampaolo Manca. He's once known as Il Doge of the Mala del Brenta gang in Venice, Italy. Giampaolo spent nearly 37 years behind bars for his role in a life of crime. And since his release, he has dedicated himself to redemption, using his past as a powerful tool to inspire change. He actively supports Alpha Beta, an organization that works with children on the autism spectrum, and spends his time speaking in high schools across Italy, urging young people to choose a different path than the one he once walked. And also welcoming here, Gianna Isabella Magliocco. She began her career as an assistant to major directors and producers on Hollywood films such as Interstellar and The Revenant. She later founded her own company, Gate 67 Films, producing several feature films from her base in Lethbridge, Alberta. Eventually drawn to writing and directing, Gianna took a leap of faith, flying to Italy without knowing the language or a single person. Amazing, by the way. And then after meeting Giampaolo Manca online. So that journey led her to her directorial debut, Il Doge, A Portrait of Redemption, a featured documentary chronicling Giampaolo's remarkable transformation and marking the start of a partnership to support his ongoing philanthropic efforts. So we've arrived here. Giampaolo, welcome.
Buon-
Buonasera.
Buonasera. In Italia c'era il lì mattina, no? Yes, he says, and there it's the morning, so good
Oh,
morning.
whoa, okay. Okay, good. There we go.
For you,
So
good
we're
morning.
begin
For
with
me,
Italian
good
language
night.
lessons. Yes,
Yeah.
please teach me. Yeah. It is evening time, right?
For us, yes, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
thank you. So
buonasera.
I've learned two words.
Yeah.
So let's begin with my first questions. Your early years. What shaped you as a young man, and when did things begin to shift for you?
Oh, they oh, and to tell everyone, Italian, I'm still learning, so I had to do a bit of Google translating for this. So if I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Allora, iniziamo dai tuoi primi anni. Cosa ti ha plasmato da giovane e quando le cose hanno iniziato a cambiare? Eh,
Eh, oggi è la festa del papà,
mhm.
ma l'inizio di tutto è la violenza che ho subito da mio padre da bambino.
Okay, so he said, today is Father's Day, but how it started for him would have been the violence and abuse he received as a child in the hands of his father. So a difficult day.
E quella violenza che abbiamo ricevuto io, my brother, mio gemello e la mia mamma, credo sia il motivo per poi perdermi completamente.
So he said the violence that he received along with his twin brother Fabio and his mother kind of set the path for him to be lost, basically.
E quindi per non avere subire violenza scappavamo di casa
So to not endure the abuse, him and his twin brother also just escaped from the house as often as they could.
e nella strada conosci un po' tutti
And in the street, they knew kind of pretty much everyone.
e conosci anche dei ragazzini che disadattati significa che provengono dalla povertà vera
So then in the street, they got to know like other kind of teenagers, young boys who were also who were quite poor. Okay.
Noi di famiglia eravamo ricchi, avevamo degli alberghi a Venezia.
And they weren't poor. So his mother owned a hotel in Venice, and so did his father actually. And so they weren't poor, but they were escaping for that purpose.
Quindi i nostri comportamenti non sono dovuti alla povertà,
And so their behavior had nothing to do with poverty.
ma io e Fabio abbiamo iniziato a frequentare questi ragazzi poveri, che questi ragazzi poveri, giovani come noi, ci davano l'amore, quell'amore che noi non trovavamo, non c'era a casa nostra, a parte la mamma, a parte la mamma.
So then he said that him and his twin brother, when they were in contact with the younger boys that were poor, they saw and experienced like a love that they were not experiencing at home. But he said, except for his mother, definitely.
E cominci, cominci per gioco, perché è stato un gioco inizialmente.
And it started as a game for them.
Perché noi facevamo tutto quello che il papà non voleva.
Because they would do everything that their father didn't want them to do.
Era una sfida contro mio padre.
It was a way of going against his father.
E quindi questi giochi poi sono diventati azioni di un certo livello con questi ragazzi giovani.
So then he said that it would, escalate, and the games sort of just became like evolved onto a certain level.
E quindi questo gruppo di ragazzi con altri ragazzi diventa la Mala del Brenta.
And so along with their kind of group of young boys and teenagers, there were other groups as well, that were on kind of the mainland, and all together formed the Mala del Brenta, which was one bigger gang.
Io sono stato in carcere dei ragazzini, in carcere minorile,
He was in a youth detention center, a youth prison.
e quindi abbiamo conosciuto altri ragazzi
And there met other young boys, young
e
men.
alla fine il gruppo storico, il completo, era di circa 500 persone.
And then the historical group of all of them would be around 500 members.
Però in questi ragazzini poveri io ho conosciuto Silvano
But
che ha determinata la mia ascesa all'inferno, no? Nel senso che tu dirai che è stato ucciso,
see,
la verità, e da lì sono diventato un criminale, perché volevo vendicarlo.
okay. So out of the group of young men, one of them was Silvano, who was his best friend, and he was a bit older, so kind of like a mentor in a way. And then unfortunately, Silvano was killed by the police in a gunfight on the canal during a boat chase. And from that moment, he says he became a real kind of hardened criminal, where he just really wanted to take revenge for the death of his best friend.
I see.
Lui era stato arrestato per le altre cose, per sue cose, e l'abbiamo fatto fuggire, perché esempio è strong, è forte, l'abbiamo fatto scappare dal Tribunale di Venezia.
Sì.
Era dentro una cella, noi abbiamo segato le sbarre, tagliate di notte.
So before he was killed, they had actually done a prison break for him, where they had cut the bars of the prison and helped him escape.
E quella fu l'ultima sua fuga e ci chiediamo, noi amici che siamo rimasti in pochi, era meglio se restava in carcere, così non moriva.
And so they all carry a bit of pain on that, because they wonder if they should have just left him in prison, because he wouldn't have died if he had stayed in prison.
Questa cosa mi ha cambiato totalmente la vita e prima non facevo cose violente e cattive. Da quel giorno sono diventato un criminale
So he said
per vendicarlo.
that day, like, they were definitely criminals, but they never did anything violent before that day. And so he said, that was the real defining day where his criminal life turned from something that was more of a game, like, thefts and things like that, to from that day forward was much more violent and vengeful, unfortunately.
Ed ecco che compongo una mia banda, un mio gruppo, e mettiamo a ferro a fuoco Venezia.
And basically with his kind of like mini group within the whole gang, they basically set Venice on fire, so to speak, not literally, but
Yeah.
with the many. crimes they committed.
Era una sfida completa con la polizia.
It was just it was a vendetta against the police at that point.
I kind
Diciamo
of
che questa parte più.
Yeah.
sorry. I have a question, you know, kind of just going back a little bit to your early years. How did you see the world as a young boy? I know you were invisible, you know, and then escaping from the home and then finding community with the boys, right? Kind of thing. But what did you see like through your eyes as a young boy at that time?
Allora, lei ha detto per andare indietro e parlare di ancora quando tu era giovane.
Sì.
Cosa hai visto in tuoi occhi di tutto? Can you
Yeah, just on boys' eyes, like what were you seeing? Like, you know, just very simple, whatever feelings, you know, like when he, yeah.
cosa hai sentito come un ragazzo giovane? Cosa hai visto sui tuoi occhi?
Allora, ho visto che la verità, io non credevo di fare questa fine, cioè ero giovane, ero, come possiamo dire, ribelle.
Mm.
Le regole non le rispettavo e vedevo questo. Dovevo fare quello che per il fatto del papà, ma anche ciò che la società imponeva, no? Le regole. E io non volevo rispettarle, perché era una specie di obbligo. Tu devi fare questo. Ma andiamo a fondo perché papà,
Sì, sì.
devi fare così, così, così. E io no. E anche le regole della convivenza civile mi stavano strette, cioè non le sopportavo, non le sopportavo. Cioè, più o meno, capito?
Sì, sì.
Ok.
Okay, so he said when he was younger, what he felt and what he saw was that his father had kind of entrapped him into all of these rules and was always like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so when so he felt like he had to rebel, but not just against his father, also against, you know, the rules of society, the rules of the police. He just did not feel a necessity to respect any rules because they made him feel like he was locked in. And so he also
Invisible.
said that he,
Yeah.
as a child, like he couldn't realize or comprehend that he would become what he became. So that was not really the future that he saw for himself at the time, but because of that feeling of being stuck and he just wanted out, basically.
Ricordiamo che il papà era un poliziotto,
Sì.
un uomo dello Stato.
Sì. He said also to remind you, but you might not know this, but his father was also was a financial police officer in Venice, and so he was a man of the state.
I see. So you often felt a bit invisible in that realm, in that structure, right? So suppressed, so to speak, right? So now taking you back to this place where you were once a very powerful figure in a dangerous world, what did that power mean to you at the time, and what did it cost you?
Allora, lei ha chiesto un tempo eri una figura potente in un mondo pericoloso. Cosa significava per te quel potere all'epoca e quanto ti è costato?
Quando arrivi a quei livelli, quando arrivi a essere potente, credi di essere il padrone del mondo, di decidere tu della vita degli altri. E questo ero abbagliato dal potere, ma dai soldi, perché bisogna dirlo, perché digli guadagnavo milioni di dollari, cioè, spiegagli che guadagnavo tanti soldi e con i soldi compravo tutto, avevo tutto quello che volevo. Questo diciamo che...
So he said that basically, when you have that kind of power, you feel like you not just get to decide for yourself, but you get to decide for everybody else. And it was a lot of power to have. And that basically, he said you can put it all like on the fact of the money. So because they would rob, money, right? And they would get that from the bank or from villas and things like that. But that money provided them with this massive amount of power and decision making over things that they should not have been
How much,
allowed.
how much money are we talking about, that range?
Detto quanti soldi ti parla di?
In dollari, in milioni di dollari, ogni anno 50 milioni di dollari.
Oh, he says about $50 million a year back in the day.
Wow.
So that's
E
quite a
quindi
significant amount of
il
money.
gruppo aveva, io prendevo 10-15 milioni di dollari all'anno,
And so he said out of the
solo io.
group, he would take 10 to 15 million.
This is
Digli che noi,
US dollars you're talking about?
Queste sarebbe dollari
americani,
American. Yes,
americani.
Wow, okay. And that was what year, in reference?
Quale anno?
Iniziato gli anni 78, 79, 1978, 79.
So it would have started in 78, 79, and then it ended on the last time he went to prison, which would be 1992.
Noi avevamo la parte finanziaria del Casino di Venezia.
So like he had control over the casino in Venice, as an example.
E quindi ogni notte giravamo 2-3 miliardi, e allora 2 o 3 milioni di dollari ogni notte ai
So
clienti, ai
he
clienti.
said basically, so at the time it was lira. So they were changing over 2 to 3 billion lira per day, which would be equivalent to 2 or 3 million per day.
E quindi immagina un ragazzo così giovane
And so imagine a young person in control of that.
non ci sei più con la testa.
And so you wouldn't have the head anymore, like you wouldn't be there.
How old were you at that time? The age?
Quanti anni avevo all'epoca?
Avevo
78.
78-24 anni. Digli, ti ricordi il film
24.
Scarface?
Sì.
Noi eravamo peggio di loro. Prendevamo... Quel film c'è un po'...
Ah, okay. So when Scarface came out, it actually influenced them.
Yeah.
And they said that, he said that they were worse than Scarface.
Ah,
E siamo diventati peggio di loro.
I see.
Gli hai detto?
Well, see. And then he said they became even worse. So
I see. It was a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of power at a young age, essentially. And yeah, I can see how that's, you're still navigating through life kind of thing. And so what did it cost you? All this power, all this wealth,
quanto ti è costato
Però,
alla fine?
sì, in questa vita poi devi pagare le tue colpe, perché è giusto pagarle. E ho passato metà della mia vita in carcere, nelle carceri di massima sicurezza, ed era giusto, come io, se tu vuoi dirlo, che non ho fatto il collaboratore, dopo vedi tu se vuoi dire questa cosa,
Sì.
ed era giusto che io avessi una pena e l'ho scontata fino alla fine.
Ma personalmente, cosa?
Personalmente mi ha distrutto dentro, no? Perché poi quando pensi la consapevolezza di tutto ciò che è stato, tu sai, lo dico sempre, che io avevo l'ergastolo, se vuoi dire, no?
Sì.
Mi è stato tolto dai giudici in fase 2, number 2, in appello.
Sì.
Ma oggi quell'ergastolo per me è sempre dentro il mio cuore, no?
Sì, sì.
Perché è l'ergastolo del rimorso. You understand
Sì, sì,
rimorso?
sì, sì, sì,
Ecco.
sì.
E questa è la mia vita che ogni giorno, ogni notte faccio e
Sì, sì.
penso tutto ciò che è stato.
Okay. Okay, so he said that and that it cost him more than half of his life because he spent more than half of his life in prison. But he just explained that the life sentence that he received, there's a second life sentence, and that's a life sentence of remorse, and that has never gone away, and that stays inside of a person, and it kind of basically like eats you alive. And that those are your thoughts when you go to sleep at night. That is what you have to live with, and it's like as he would say, he can't forgive himself for that.
See, and thank you for sharing. So, you know, I know he spent almost 37 years in prison, and I was reading that I think about 12 years was spent in solitary confinement. And while a difficult experience, I want to stop to ask, you know, what was it like during those 12 years when he's in solitary confinement?
Allora, lei ha detto che hai fatto i 37 anni, però 12 di questi anni è
Isolamento.
in isolamento, e lei vuole capire ma come è stato, perché
Come hai
per
fatto?
la gente che non posso capire queste cose, 12 anni è impossibile per capire. Come tu hai fatto questi 12 anni?
Io avevo tre alternative,
Mm.
o tre strade, una, due, tre. La prima di diventare un collaboration
Sì,
di
sì,
giustizia, la seconda evadere dal carcere, cioè
sì, sì.
scappare, e la terza accettare le conseguenze. Io ho accettato le conseguenze
Okay, so he said he had three choices
in Italia.
initially. So the first choice would have been to be a collaborator with the justice system, which means turning in the others, and he chose absolutely not to do that. His second option would be to escape from prison, and that while initially he may have tried, he decided not to. The third option was to accept the consequences of his actions, and that's the option that he chose.
Io ce l'ho fatta perché molti mi chiedono come hai fatto a stare 12 anni da solo, un'ora di aria la mattina e un'ora di aria al pomeriggio. Però è stata la forza di voler vivere comunque, di non mollare, di dire non ci sono alternative, devi accettare. E io ho accettato, anche se è stata durissima, perché ancora mi porto le mie ferite, però, come ho detto prima, era giusto che ci fosse questo castigo
Ah.
dell'uomo.
Okay, so he said, like basically how it worked was he was all alone for the entire duration of the day, and he would get essentially what's known as like 1 hour of air, which is also alone. And then so that would be in the morning time, and then they would get, well, like he would get another hour in the evening, but it was always spent alone. He said the will to not give up, not want to die in prison, and to accept the consequences of his actions are what kept him going through that time.
That's um that's a very dedicated focus to stay with that clarity in mind because I mean I can only imagine that it would drive a normal person mad.
Oh yes, sorry. He did
Yeah.
also say that he still carries wounds from that time today. Like, you know, like he didn't say specifically, but I'm assuming that he meant mental health wise as
Yes.
well.
So also a trauma. So, and I think, with all that time spent in prison, was there a turning point in prison when you knew you had to change your life?
Ha chiesto se c'era appunto quando una punta, quando tu eri in carcere, dove è cambiato tutto per te. No. Io sapevo la risposta, ma vuoi dire this one is hard for him.
Un mio familiare mi viene a trovare e mi dice, tuo padre è in coma, sai cosa vuol dire
Sì,
coma,
sì,
no?
sì, la stessa cosa.
E sta per morire. E molti mi chiedono, ma che te ne frega a te di tuo padre, anche se muore, dopo tutto quello che ti ha fatto. Ma però io, come sai, è sempre mio papà.
Sì, lo so.
E quindi ho iniziato a pregare Dio che non morisse. E questo è stato. E da lì inizia...
Aspetta,
Sorry.
allora posso spiegare
Ok,
qualcosa? Posso dire
sì, sì, sì,
che tutta
certo,
la vita.
certo.
Okay. Okay, so he said the first thing that happened. So there's two things. So I'll just explain the first one. So basically, a family member came to him and told him that his father was in a coma and was very close to passing away
Per il cancro, aveva il cancro.
because he had cancer. And he said lots of people would ask him, like, well, why would you care about that? He was a very violent man. And he said, yes, but he was still my father. And he also always says that he would take those beatings again because it means that he has his son Armando, and then his son Armando has a son James, so he has a grandson now. So he always says that he can forgive his father because he has his son and his grandson. So that's the first part.
Ma poi, qualche anno dopo, tu sai la storia, un'altra brutta notizia che Fabio è malato di cancro.
Mhm.
E lì la mia disperazione, perché avevo paura di perderlo,
Mm.
e ancora prego Dio che non mi porta via Fabio. E sai, tutto, puoi spiegarlo.
Sì. Okay, so he said, okay, so going back to the father, he prayed that his father would be okay, and his father did not die. Then he gets another notice a couple years later that his twin brother has cancer as well, and that he is also dying. And he said that was definitely the more defining moment for him because he did not want to lose his twin brother. They had been through so much together. And so he really, really prayed hard that he would not lose his brother, and his brother survived. His brother is still alive today, his twin. And so yeah, he said that from that point forward he could never be this criminal again.
Dio mi ha fatto un regalo immenso, prima il papà
Mhm.
non me l'ha portato via e poi ha dato un'altra vita a mio fratello Fabio.
Mm.
Io non potevo più fare del male ed essere un criminale.
Mhm.
Ecco com'è cambiata la mia vita.
Yes, so he said that you know, that was the only way that he could change was you know, that God gave him the gift of the life of both his father and his twin brother.
E ho detto a Dio, oggi ti voglio servire e quello che tu mi hai insegnato da bambino, che poi mi sono dimenticato, io oggi voglio essere un tuo soldato, un tuo angelo.
So he said that from that point, he wanted to be in service of God. He wanted to be good, like he was taught when he was just a boy, but that he seemed to have forgotten his whole life. And then at that point, he was hoping to act more like an angel.
Thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your hope and your passion for sharing what you just have shared. So, um, you know, it was a very powerful, there was two very powerful, pivotal moments in your life that, because of in a sense, kind of like a blessing in disguise, where they brought you news that were negative, but it also planted the seed of hope for that transformation pivotal point in your life. So that major shift into the change of your life. And I think that that eventually led you, I think, down the pathway where I think you begin exploring different studies during your prison time, which was, you know, yeah, if you want to translate that for him first, yeah.
Oh, credo che
Digli cattiva che mi ha fatto piangere.
He said, how mean of you to make him cry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. I feel you.
Ha detto che tu hai ricevuto quelle brutte notizie, ma poi che tu hai cambiato la strada è una cosa grande, una cosa
Coraggiosa.
coraggiosa, una, spero,
Una speranza.
esperienza grande.
Ma è quello che io tramando ai ragazzi giovani che non devono seguire il mio esempio, ma anzi devono cogliere dalla mia vita per essere dei bravi ragazzi, per essere l'Italia nuova, no? E tu sai che ho centinaia di migliaia di ragazzi che mi seguono e mi vogliono bene come un nonno.
Sì. So he says that that this is the part that he teaches to the younger men and women in high schools especially, just how not to follow this path, and that he feels a great responsibility because there are now lots of them who follow him now on social media, and that you know, they really appreciate him, and he feels like he is the grandfather of all of them now for the new generation of Italy.
Digli che vado nelle scuole a parlare, nelle chiese anche, e tutto questo amore che dicevo mi aiuta a lenire anche le mie ferite, perché anche io ho delle ferite. Ho fatto del male agli altri, ma l'ho subito anch'io. Non è giustificabile. Io ho sbagliato, quindi è comprensibile. Però anch'io ho bisogno dell'amore degli altri per farmi guarire.
So he said this sort of responsibility, this speaking with the young people and hearing their stories and his, and that he carries these very deep wounds, and he's saying he doesn't make that as a justification for his actions, because his actions were not justifiable, but that by seeing them and hearing their stories and hearing, you know, the good that that he is able to give them, that, you know, it acts almost as a way of repairing or healing some of those wounds.
I see it's such a, that's the thing about social media.
Mm.
Such a powerful tool, such a powerful platform. And, I think what is really significant is that if you're on the social media platform, that you utilize it, you harness the power of social media to talk about advocacy, to instill change, transformation, and then, leading by certain examples and sharing the journey of, the coming and the going kind of thing. So I think that's a powerful thing to always keep in mind, the significant impact of social media. So yeah, so what he's been doing so far, yeah.
Yeah. Ha spiegato un po' di social e che c'è un impatto grande, che tu puoi mandare i tuoi messaggi
Messaggi,
sui
sì.
social e che fai...
E molti ragazzi mi ringraziano,
Sì, sì.
molta gente malata anche di cancro perché sanno la storia di mio padre, di Fabio, mi telefonano, vogliono una parola d'amore, di conforto. E addirittura gente che si voleva uccidere e ha detto, io ho visto la sua storia, lei mi ha dato la forza di andare avanti e di superare questo momento che si volevano uccidere veramente. E quindi io ho anche paura, ricordi cosa ti dico,
Sì, sì,
no?
sì.
Il mio ruolo mi fa paura perché io non sono nessuno. Io sono una persona che ha sbagliato, ma ci sono troppe aspettative. Ho
Sì, sì.
paura perché in Italia si dice mi hanno messo un vestito
Ah,
e questo vestito che mi è stato messo
ah,
dalla comunità mi fa paura.
sì.
Non vo- ho paura di deludere gli altri.
Sì, sì. Okay, so he said that he carries a very big responsibility and he is afraid of letting people down because the amount of people on social media that reach out to him personally, either with you know, stories of a significant other or themselves who have cancer, who have heard the story of his twin brother, or people who can't make it through a day and call and say like your story saved my life, that he says like it's a responsibility that like weighs on him a little bit because basically he says he's not anyone, he's just somebody who lived a very hard life and made a lot of mistakes and um, you know, isn't ready for that kind of, like, it's a very heavy responsibility, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have the same 24 hours in a day. We live under the same sky. And I think, with what we have now, like the opportunity, if it comes up, to be able to offer a kind of encouragement, a support, right? Something, right? I think that's really extremely powerful. So thank you for sharing. And I wanted to kind of go into, continue on expanding this transformation. I know part of that journey while you were in prison, I think you started studying theater. So I was wondering what that effect and impact did the theater studies have on your transformation?
Allora, ha detto che quando tu eri
Aspetta, voglio dire una cosa che è importantissima.
Ok.
Dio può fare tutto.
Ah,
L'impossibile diventa possibile.
okay.
Chiedo.
So he wanted to say something before he answers. I translate that. Is that
Dio può fare tutto, cioè
God can do everything.
e l'impossibile, impossible,
Sì, sì.
diventa possible.
And anything that is impossible becomes possible.
Perché per cambiare me, che era impossibile, lui ci riuscì.
He said, if God could help him change, then anything is possible. And then posso?
Sì.
Ok. Allora, lei ha detto che quando tu eri in carcere tu hai fatto il teatro e lei vuole capire quale effetto e impatto hanno avuto gli studi teatrali sulla tua trasformazione.
Allora,
Si c'era.
sì. Eh, allora, noi, anche se eravamo nelle carceri speciali, spiegagli quello che è,
Sì.
abbiamo avuto questa opportunità, era la prima volta che succedeva in tutta Italia. Noi siamo diventati studio e oggi nelle carceri italiane, nel trattamento penitenziario dell'insegnamento c'è il teatro, grazie a noi. Il teatro a me, tu sai, io amo il teatro, sono una persona, perché mio nonno lavorava nel più grande teatro di Venezia, la Fenice, e l'avevo dentro. Io non ho difficoltà a comunicare, perché sono questo, tu sai.
Sì, sì. Okay, so he said that his grandfather worked in kind of the most well-known theater in Venice called the Fenice, and that he's always kind of had theater inside of him. That he's never had issues communicating with other people, and that he's always kind of had to be, an actor. And basically, so he was saying that so his time spent was in the security prisons through all of Italy, and that it was in during his time that they created this program to allow maximum security prisoners the opportunity to do theater, and that it was kind of like a proof of concept to see if this could work, and that now they continue doing that through the prison system.
E quando preparavamo un'opera, ed erano 4, 5, 6 mesi, no? E quindi era anche una specie di evadere, you understand evadere?
Sì, 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 scappare.
E evadevamo col cuore, con la testa, e questa cosa qua ci faceva star bene, anche se poi, finito
Sì.
la lezione, entravamo in cella e ci chiudevano.
So he said that, so basically for those, a few hours per day, they really had the opportunity to focus on something, like to almost take their mind off the fact that they're in prison and to really focus on something fun and creative. But he did say that it was hard because then, at the end of those hours, you still go back and you're locked into a prison cell, right? So,
Tu digli, abbiamo fatto dei lavori di Bertolt Brecht, Seneca, cioè delle cose anche impegnative, eravamo bravi, eravamo bravi.
see, he said they did lots of like really kind of hard plays like Seneca and
Bertolt Brecht,
and
Bertolt Brecht si chiama Brecht. Sì.
and I don't know how to translate that names always because the pronunciation is strange for me. But basically like the kind of bigger, harder Greek plays, right? And so
It didn't make
Ho
it
fatto
easy.
l'inferno di Dante Alighieri.
and he said he also did Inferno, Dante's Inferno. And yeah, and adesso ho perso perché io ero in mezzo di translation.
E quindi il teatro per me è stato importante per il
Sì.
mio spirito.
Sì.
E quando eravamo lì non eravamo in carcere.
So he said it was important for his spirit because, yeah, when they were doing theater, he didn't feel like he was in prison.
That was a little bit of life-changing in transition in that moment, right? So stepping into another body and role and then stepping out of it, stepping back in. So that was, I guess, in some ways also healing for him. Yeah,
Era anche in una forma di cura
Brava,
sì.
yes, brava. È stata una medicina.
It was a medicine. Yes.
it is, yes. It's interesting because I was speaking, I met someone at the Cannes Festival before too, and I think he was still doing his time in prison, but he came with someone that was kind of his sponsor because he had a feature film that he wanted to work on, sorry. And I think part of the programming, this person is in UK, United Kingdom, and essentially, the programming was a nonprofit organization where they help support, like, reform, right? So these,
Mm.
men that were still doing time, they can choose an educational path, in which for him, I think out of a whole lot, there was only four that was interested in studying film studies. So that's what he
Mm.
chose. And because of that, he was choosing a different path away from his former path, so to speak. Like it was healing for him. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah. Le vorrei dire la storia di quando era la mostra di Cannes quest'anno e lei ha fatto un incontro con un detenuto che era di Inghilterra
Mm,
e che c'era un tipo di programma
sì.
dove
I volontari, i
i
volontari,
volontari
sì.
aiuta a lui per fare un film.
Però sulla sua vita,
He's asking if the film the guy made was about his own life.
Um, I think it was about something else. I'm not sure what that developed was. That was some years ago, but it was very. I had a live talk. If you check back for the BC Minorities talk, yeah, I had a
Yeah.
live talk with them. We were sharing about his path, and it was kind of like just really amazing because he's talking about this organization where there's experts, professors, they come in to offer a non-punitive culture of communicating and understanding. So they're changing the conversation around punishment and then understanding the complexity of change. So it is yeah, so basically they're helping to improve the quality to promote like a healthy prison and the quality of interactions, and then using prison as an opportunity to create a safe environment to grow in. So that, that transition out, I think, as there's a reduction of harm, kind of thing, and then developing autonomy and empowering people. Yeah, so that they could grow.
Allora, non hanno parlato tanto di quale film lui ha
sì,
fatto, però per lei capire, ha capito che non era su sua vita,
vita, ok.
però ha spiegato che
I volontari, sì,
la missione, loro hanno parlato tanto di la missione, perché la missione è incredibile, che loro vuole aiutare i detenuti
sì,
di dentro e poi che quando uscire fuori ha la capacità di uscire senza...
cattiveria,
Sì, sì,
rancore, odio.
esatto.
Anche in Italia, digli che per noi, i volontari per noi sono la nostra famiglia, la
Sì.
mamma, lo zio, il cugino, la sorella,
Mm,
perché d- danno quell'amore che ognuno di noi ha bisogno.
mm,
E quindi non solo in Italia, ma anche in Inghilterra.
sì.
Ed è bellissimo.
So he said, there were the volunteers that did not just the theater, but in general in the prison, they became kind of like a family for not just him, but the rest of the prisoners because it felt like, an aunt or an uncle or, just a family member who's there for you, who kind of loves you basically, you know. And that
Yeah,
was, something that also really helped.
I think that's yeah, in the same alignment. Thank you for sharing. It's that place that I was talking about is called Penal Reform Solutions. And
Mm,
in alignment to that, of course, being in 2025, I think what they want to do is make prison meaningful. So because they believe that prisons can be meaningful through building trust, which is all those programmings, right? And doing theater, for example, and having an individualized approach and developing positive relationships to understand what brings meaning to prisoners. So what that does is that it promotes positive identities through a strength-based approach. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a way out, I think, of that.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So, you know, you've lived a story that most screenwriters wouldn't dare imagine, and but your life is truth. So why do stories like yours matter, especially on screen? Yeah.
Allora, ha detto che hai vissuto una storia che la maggior parte delle sceneggiatori come me non oserebbe, scusa,
Sì, immaginare.
immaginare. Ma la tua vita è verità, non è un romanzo. Perché storie come la tua sono importanti, soprattutto sullo schermo, intendevo nel cinema. Anche va bene su televisione.
Allora,
Perché portare la tua storia?
perché dobbiamo far capire che il bene vince sul male. E, ed è questo che noi vogliamo fare. Tu sai, lo diciamo sempre, nessuno nasce criminale, lo diventa. Ma se mai faremo un film, il nostro messaggio è quale? Che comunque sia, anche il peggiore essere umano ha una piccola fiammella di bene. Questa fiammella la devi alimentare con altro bene.
Sì, sì,
Se tu hai una fiamma del male
sì,
e la alimenti col male, è peggio.
sì, sì,
Quindi questa fiamma diventa un grande fuoco e diventa un fuoco d'amore e di bene.
sì,
E allora noi vogliamo portare questo, dare questo messaggio al mondo. E pertanto chi è un criminale,
sì, sì,
guardando la mia storia, dice, ci pensa.
sì.
Capisci?
Sì, sì.
Scusa.
Scusa, tanto. Va bene. Sorry, you told me a lot, and now I have to remember it all.
It's
So
okay.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so basically he's saying that the message that we would like to bring is that that good always wins over evil. And so what he means by that is he's saying that even the worst, so first he said that criminals are not born criminals, they become criminals. So children are innocent, like they're not born a criminal and then they go and do these bad things. It's the life that you live that makes you become that. And so basically what he is saying is like the worst of the worst criminal that he has seen has this like tiny flame of good inside of them. And he said that if you can just ignite that flame with more good instead of more bad, then you can help save that person, the heartache of becoming something that they will later regret.
That is very powerful.
Understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Understand.
Thank you. And now in talking about redemption, because I know you're in this path of redemption, it is a very powerful word. What does it mean to you to live redemption every day after everything that you've lived through?
Allora, ha detto che redenzione è una parola potente. Cosa significa vivere la redenzione ogni giorno dopo tutto quello che hai vissuto? E ti fai piangere ogni domanda. Scusa. It's an emotional question for him.
La redenzione per me significa dire al mondo che Dio ci ha insegnato la strada buona
Mm.
e devi seguire quello che Dio ti dice ogni giorno. E devi essere per gli altri, non girarti dall'altra parte,
Mm.
o meglio, non guardare sempre avanti, ma girarti anche dall'altra parte e capire chi ha bisogno di te.
Mm.
E questa oggi è la mia vita e la redenzione è ogni giorno, di continuo, di continuo. Mi metto sempre in discussione,
Mm.
perché c'è il diavolo che le tentazioni, però io ormai, tu sai, mi conosci, io vivo per questo, perché ho bisogno di questo, per ripulirmi il mio animo,
Mm.
anche se è dura, perché poi lo direi a lei, Dio mi ha perdonato,
Mm.
è il problema che io non riesco a perdonarmi, e tu sai, me lo dici sempre.
So he said that, okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
he, yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah, I'm sorry.
lives redemption every single day, and what it means to him is like, in a way, like not, and so this isn't a literal translation, but like basically not turning your back on the people that need you. And so he calls it like a way of cleaning his soul and basically trying to put that good back into the world, because he really thinks that following God's path forward will just lead him to more good. And then and hang on, sorry, I'm trying to think of everything he said there. Ho dimenticato qualcosa.
Amore, hai parlato in inglese, non posso aver capito.
Lo so. Ora ho detto la parte di pulire l'anima,
Sì,
ho detto la parte di ogni giorno di seguire Dio,
certo, e
di aiutare tutti. Ah, ok, la parte.
Dio,
No, aspetta. Okay, the part, sorry, the last part was the part most important, is that he said that he believes God forgave him, but he still has not managed to forgive himself.
And hence this continuous journey of, doing his advocacy and his work. And
Mhm.
in that alignment, in regards to the film industry, I have a deeper question is like, and what do you want the film industry and the people behind the camera to understand about redemption, representation, and reality? Because it's two different things, one to live it yourself and experience, and then the other one is somebody behind the camera seeing or trying to understand, maybe never understanding.
Allora, c'è differenza perché tu vivere queste cose, però la persona come me, come lei, siamo dietro della macchina fotografica.
sì,
E lei dici cosa vuoi che l'industria cinematografica e le persone dietro della macchina, come me e lei, da preso capiscano di redenzione, rappresentazione e realtà.
allora, queste storie sempre o quasi sempre hanno due vie d'uscita, o vieni ucciso o muori in carcere.
Mhm.
La mia storia è una storia di speranza, come ho detto prima. Io voglio essere un missionario, voglio che il mondo, i ragazzi che si perdono, voglio che imparino da me, che cioè che possiamo cambiare, tutti possono cambiare, se lo vuoi.
Sì,
Sorry.
scusa. Okay, so he said, sorry, I have to translate it a bit at a time so I don't forget.
Oh.
He said that stories like his, they either end in death or prison for life, which also ends in death. And so a story like his, like there are not many people who have left prison and that have been in his position or have a similar story. And so what he hopes is that his story will become a story of hope, like that he will be able to impart this on a younger generation and that they will be able to change their path.
Perché i ragazzi giovani sono abbagliati da queste storie. La mia paura è questa. E quindi dobbiamo far vedere il male assoluto, cosa porta, le conseguenze per chi le riceve, la tua famiglia, in primis la collettività, la famiglia e tu stesso. Questi dobbiamo far ragionare questi ragazzi e deve essere un monito. Cosa vuol dire fare il criminale?
Okay. Awesome.
Ok.
Okay, so he said that like basically that these young people love this type of story and that in a way it's unfortunate, like because you know they're so stuck on that type of story, but he really wants to show what the extreme bad, like what are the consequences of being extremely bad, and that the hope is that showing that those consequences are really like really bad consequences, that it might help somebody along the way.
E quindi, se mai un giorno qualcuno farà un film su di me, sulla mia storia, deve essere un film di speranza. Dobbiamo, e soprattutto, credere anche nell'uomo che ha sbagliato, perché questo uomo può fare molto per gli altri.
So he said that he needs those who are going to make a film about his life to know that he wants it to be at the end a film that is hopeful. And
Non deve essere un film morboso.
it doesn't want it to be a morbid film.
Sì, c'è stato il male, ok, però deve esplodere l'amore, il bene, il voler aiutare. Questo è il messaggio che dobbiamo dare, cioè, secondo me.
It needs to be a message of hope at the end, that anybody can make this change and that, you know,
Poi quando parleremo dei bambini, tu sai il mio sogno qual è? Vedere il film che si conclude con la casa dei bambini e poi posso morire.
no.
Yes.
Okay, he says that he, you know, and I guess that's a part that we'll talk about later, but basically the dream that he has to build a house for autistic children, that would end up being at the end of a film, and that then he can die in peace, as he says.
Io vivo per questo Dio.
And he said he lives for that now.
E per me e per mio nipote, no?
And he said also for his son and grandson.
Thank you for sharing. Moving to the next question that I have is, I think this word is kind of a struggle now in 2025. So I wanted to ask you, how do you define loyalty now? And what advice would you give young men today about love, family, and showing up for the people they love?
Ok, una bellissima domanda. Come definisci la lealtà oggi? E che consiglio daresti ai giovani di oggi sull'amore, la famiglia e l'importanza di essere presenti per le persone che amano?
Strong.
It's a great question.
Allora, iniziamo dalla lealtà.
Sì.
Io credo tu sai il mio modo di essere stato anche nel male, per me era come si dice? Se io non ero leale, anche nel male sono stato leale.
Sì, vero. Mm,
E quindi la lealtà è un fattore della vita importantissimo.
mm,
Devi essere leale. Lo ero con il male. Immagina oggi col bene, no?
sì,
Cioè, una roba immensa.
sì, sì.
Questo io voglio
Ok,
dire che bisogna essere leali con tutti,
ok,
a tutti quelli che ti ascoltano,
sì, sì.
che ti supportano, che ti vogliono bene.
Okay. So he said he wanted to start with
Mm.
the question about loyalty.
Yeah.
And he said that, you know, even in his bad life, he was always very loyal. And so it is something that is quite important to him and something that he believes everyone should be loyal. And that imagine if he was loyal in his bad life, now that he's in his good life, how much more it signifies for him today.
Mm.
Adesso cosa devo dirmi?
Allora, che consiglio daresti ai giovani di oggi sull'amore, la famiglia e l'importanza di essere presenti per le persone che amano?
Allora, io non sono stato un bravo papà, perché tu sai che mio figlio che voleva fossi a casa e io non c'ero mai. Oggi mio figlio mi ama, ma però c'è amore e odio perché dice, ma perché mi hai lasciato solo tutti questi anni? E queste sono una delle colpe più gravi. Ma devo dire, ai ragazzi devo dire, sempre lo dico, di ascoltare i genitori, non come ho fatto io.
Mm.
Perché il no di un genitore, di una mamma, di un papà, lo dico anche nelle scuole, è un no d'amore. Se il papà dice di no, c'è un motivo. Il papà non ti vuole far soffrire e quindi devi capire
Mm.
che è un no d'amore. E poi l'amore verso la famiglia, ma io che una famiglia non l'ho avuta, è l'infade. Senza la famiglia muori, è l'infa,
Mm.
è quella cosa che ti fa andare avanti. Senza quella cosa fai? Non
Mm.
puoi vivere. Se adesso magari puoi fare...
Sì, sì. Okay, so uh
E
ancora perché
un
adesso
ragazzino, quando il papà dice no,
sì, okay. Sorry.
No.
So basically he said like you know, when you're younger and your parents say no, he wants to like mention that, you know, that the possibility of listening to one's parents a bit more.
Mm.
Um, that, you know, had he listened to his parents more, he might not have gone down that path. Um, and that a parent isn't saying no, you know, just to say no, but that they, you know, it's a no of love, you know, it's for your own good. And so he wanted to impart that, and that family, like there's no life without family.
Mm.
Whatever that family is, there's like, you know, there's no life with that. And he said that you know, that he wasn't a good father because how could he be a good father if he was in prison and wasn't at home with his son? And so he said, even though his son has forgiven him and there's love in their relationship now, that sometimes he feels like it's a love hate because he wasn't there for the most important pieces of his son's life. And so then went back to speaking about, yeah, listening to one's parents.
I
Yeah.
see. And thank you for sharing because you know, when you were defining loyalty, I think back to earlier in our conversation today that you had mentioned that you chose to stay in prison and continue that path, right? And take that on yourself. So that was kind of in a form a sort of loyalty to what you chose, that path, right? So and in regards to having family and building good ties, right, kind of things, I think this good section of your life that you're living right now is part of the process where you're working with um, to build the relationship continuously with your sons and your grandsons and the next generations as well. Yeah.
Vedo che è importante la relazione con tuo figlio adesso e con tuo amico e che la tua parola di lealtà.
Sì.
Sì.
E, e però ho tanta paura quando mio nipote saprà di me chi sono stato.
And he says he's also quite scared when his grandson is old enough to understand who he is. And he wanted to add that.
That's an intense vulnerability of something unknown. And I guess in that alignment, maybe another way to look at it is that perhaps if a young person today feels trapped or lost like you once did, what's the one truth that you would want them to hear?
Se c'era un ragazzo o ragazza giovane che sentire perso oggi, cosa la cosa, solo cosa che tu puoi dire a loro per aiutare?
Allora, io ho vissuto i momenti della mia vita che mi sentivo perso, però ho lottato con tutto me stesso
Mm.
per la voglia di vivere
Mm.
e per poi donarmi agli altri. Quindi dico ai ragazzi, vi prego, non dovete abbattervi. Ci sono dei momenti difficili per tutti, ma tu devi prefiggerti una meta, cioè un obiettivo.
Mm.
Non è facile, perché sappiamo che non è facile la vita, ma tu devi, dico, noi, loro hanno dei talenti, tutti hanno dei talenti. Dio disse queste cose.
Mm.
Ognuno di noi ha un talento. Deve sforzarsi, non si deve abbattere, non si deve prendere dalla depressione. Tanti ragazzi giovani si uccidono, è vero, è vero. Invece no, devi aggrapparti alla vita. Anche quando ci sono quelle cose difficili che tu credi che siano l'Everest,
Mm.
che è difficile scalarlo. Ma se tu vuoi, puoi farcela.
Mm.
Devi, devi
Mhm.
combattere per le cose del bene, naturalmente, no?
Sì, sì. So he said that he did feel lost at one point, but that he was able to grab on to things, and that what he would impart on somebody young is to know that everybody has a talent. So God has given us this gift, and we all each have talents, and to grab onto that and go with it. And he said, even if the problem feels like Mount Everest, you can take it one step at a time. And that, that you just have to hold on to that thing, that gift, and just move forward with that. So.
That's very powerful and it's very true. Just hold on, build, and push through, right? It's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. So I think that's
And he
very, very
said also the word like combat, but he doesn't mean it in a like a fight, like basically like fight for that life that you want, essentially.
yeah.
Io non ho mollato, sono qui oggi che ho la possibilità di scrivere libri, parlare con la gioventù per farla cambiare. Ho la possibilità che in Canada mi possano sentire,
Sì.
ho la possibilità che lei mi possa vedere e raccontare la mia vita.
Sì.
Ecco, perché? Perché non ho mollato, non ho
Mhm.
mollato e quindi dico ai ragazzi, non dovete mollare. Con le unghie, cioè, non devi mollare,
Mm.
perché la vita non è tutta nera.
Mm.
Do you understand?
So he said, life isn't all bad, and that basically, he's here now and he has the possibility. And he specifically said, like here talking on an interview in Canada, that would have been impossible not
That's
too long ago.
yeah.
But, that he's here and living that moment, and that not everything is bad in life, and that you just have to hold on and like push forward through it and not give up, and just take it in its ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a believer in that. So life is always really messy and very broken and very unexpected in a lot of times in the daily realities. And there are things that you can control, but there are many things that are out of your influence and control. And all you can really do as a human being surviving this world is to, I always tell people that I know, accentuate the positive. So you focus on the positive because when you do that, you can transform and you can build and you can create and you can grow. And that's how you can foster that continuous of environment of sustainable, you know, platform. Yeah, for yourself
Yeah.
and all the people around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tu ce la fai a leggere questa cosa? In inglese?
No.
Troppo
Sì,
difficile?
no, no. Perché?
Perché voglio far capire che raccontando la mia storia, è una storia dura, cruda, sono riuscito a farmi voler bene della gente,
Ok.
nonostante io ho fatto delle cose gravissime.
Sì,
E allora questa è una testimonianza che vince il bene
sì.
quando fai bene. Cioè,
Ok.
comunque
No.
volevo dire una roba del genere.
Okay.
Ok,
Okay.
però,
No.
sorry.
Because he brought up a passage on his phone and he's like, "Can you translate this into English?" I'm like, "Oh no, I can't." And so then he basically just explained like it's like a testimonial from somebody who read his story and it helped them. So, but I'm not the best translator just yet.
Oh,
So,
you've been fantastic. Yeah, you've been fantastic. Yeah. So I very much appreciate Gianna. Excellent being here. Yeah,
thank
to
you.
translate. Yeah. And for the audience, on behalf of the audience, yeah, thank you guys both being here, the presents. Yeah, and so yeah, it's this hope, right? So in that alignment, I think it's been quite a little bit of a time. I thought maybe we can take a 5 minute intermission, so then we can just be off camera, and then we'll come back right here. That
Sure.
sounds good. Yeah,
That
so I'll
sounds
see you
great.
in a little bit. Yeah.
So do I click off or I
Oh
just
no,
turn
just
off camera
just stay on.
audio?
Yeah, you can just turn off
Oh,
the
okay.
audio, yeah, the camera, so you can have a 5 minute intermission break.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
stay on, stay online. Yeah, I'll be right back. Just gonna do a check. Okay. I believe we are back. And I feel like I'm just doing a quick check too as well for the live stream, how that is going. And
How's it going?
I I hope it's record. Well, it's okay. We're live and recording. If not, this is a whole session that's been recorded, and yeah, so that was a little bit of a technical check right there. Alrighty. So thank you very much for the first segment of the talk. Um, Essentially, we're now entering the phase two, which is the section about autism. And I think before we begin, I wanted to talk about how, what is the definition of autism? And I think in regard to, so here's a snippet. So, in understanding autism, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition marked by difficulties in social communication and restricted repetitive behaviors. It ranges across a spectrum from mild to severe and often affects sensory processing, thinking, and behavior. The causes are complex and multifactorial. There's genetic factors that play a major role, with estimates suggesting genetic account for 60 to 90% of risk, often involving multiple genes. And of course, there's environmental influences like prenatal factors that can contribute, though most individuals exposed don't become autistic. And these sources come from different government sources, as well as mayoclinic.org, autismspeaks.org, you know. Um, Now, someone may ask the question why someone is autistic. So, autistic is not developed or acquired through upbringing or events. It's present at birth and identified as a child's brains develop, okay? And this is from clevelandclinic.org. Risk factors include being male, family history of autism, certain genetic syndromes such as Fragile X, and preterm birth. So it's a natural variation in human neurology, not a disease caused by external circumstances. And there's quite a bit of impact of insufficient adult, autistic care in terms of societal and economic costs. So without appropriate adult services, adults with, ASD and families facing reduced employment, over reliance on family caregivers, increased healthcare usage. So that's a problem. And there's a global economic toll of ASD, and it's actually very staggering. So, because the combined cost of what those individuals needs, they're always potentially rising. They're, for example, in US and UK, the individual may reach 2.4 million USD, and essentially that's $223 billion per year globally. That's in the year 2020. And it's going to rise to $589 billion by 2030 and $1.36 trillion by 2040. So there's a lot of things going on, okay? And higher employment of autistic adults improves actually the country's GDP. So US could gain from to 25 billion US dollars per year, for example. So with that definition kind of, as its starting point, I wanted to ask Giampaolo, like, what sparked his deep interest in autism?
Cosa ha suscitato il tuo profondo interesse per l'autismo?
Beh, tu conosci la storia, la mamma Fabiana mi ha telefonato per comprare il primo libro
Mm.
e poi ha detto tu gli spieghi cosa e per me è stato l'input, la mia salvezza totale, la mia redenzione totale.
Mm. Okay. So I just said that I know the story, so I should explain it. And so basically, so he published this book, which is El Inferno e Ritorno, or To Hell and Back, 36 years without freedom. And from that book, he got a phone call from a woman named Fabiana, and she wanted a copy of his book. And so they decided to meet, and he would bring her the book, and they met at a grocery store. And
Mm.
when he walked into this grocery store, he saw that she had a son, and he was in the shopping cart, and the son touched his face, and he said to the mother, Fabiana, he said, "Oh, wow, your son is so sweet." And she said, "Oh, my son likes you, and but you should know he has autism. He's autistic." And then he became very emotional about this experience. And so he asked her for more information,
Mm.
and she explained to him that in Italy, children who are on the autistic spectrum only receive approximately 500 euros per month in support. But therapy costs about 50 euros per hour, and it's many, many hours per week. And the sort of average income of a working family is 1,500 to 2,000 euros per month. So it's completely unsustainable
Mm.
because they can't send their child to get the therapy that is needed unless they're rich, basically. And so that caused, like, he felt like that this was something that he should help her with.
Mm.
And so he started helping, and then he met another mother. And then she said, "Oh, there's this association, Alpha Beta, and they're in our small city." And so then he met with them, and then had to ask them if it's okay if he can help them because of his past, and he wanted to be able to donate some of the profits from the books in order to help the children. And so then this really became part of him.
Mm.
Ho
Wow.
spiegato la storia di Carlo, poi di Fabiana e di Eliana, e che Eliana ti ha portata a
Alfa
sapere.
beta, brava. Sì. E
Vuoi mettere in nota? Ho
sì,
spiegato tutto?
in linea di massima, quando dico sempre, non può esserci un bambino di serie A e un bambino di serie B.
Sì, ho spiegato
Ognuno deve
questo.
avere
Sì,
le stesse
sì.
cose.
Mm.
In questi momenti io sto parlando con dei politici italiani
Mm.
perché voglio che passi la legge che tutti i bambini autistici possono avere la terapia gratuitamente.
So he's saying that right now he's been trying to talk to politicians as well. And
Mm.
so he has actually a meeting, I think it's on Tuesday. L'incontro
Sì,
martedì,
sì, no,
vero?
venerdì, venerdì.
Oh, sorry, Friday. So he has a
Right.
meeting on Friday with a few politicians
Yeah.
to discuss the possibility of trying to make this care free for all children on the autistic spectrum.
Mm. That's very, very important because with hearing from Giampaolo about his interest about autistic and his support in this issue, I started also looking at what happens after 18 for autistic individuals in Italy. So just reading from different um, credible sources, of course, transition to adult psychiatric services. So essentially, the support for autism ends at 18, and then they're transferred to a general mental health services, which is the Dipartimenti di Salute Mentale, which are not specialized in autism. And this transition is often abrupt and lacks planning or continuity. So sudden cutoff almost. So then, because of that, they I think Italy is also experiencing a loss of structure educational or day programs. Many services and therapeutic interventions provided during childhood, like speech therapy, those, costly hourly rates, right? Occupational therapy, they stop or become like private pay. So you have to have money in order to sustain those support. And then access to day centers, job training, or adult education depends really heavily on the region. So it varies. There's limited residential or independent living options. So only 5% of adults with autism in Italy access residential care. And most autistic adults live with family, often long into adulthood. And the demand for supported housing or co-housing programs exceeds supply. So what that means, there's not enough housing available. Okay, and this
Dimmi
comes,
che c'è
yeah.
il mio sogno, sorry.
Perché
Sì,
lei ha
sì,
detto
scusa.
una cosa. Allora, lei ha spiegato a tutti che in Italia di tutti i bambini
Autistici.
autistici ci sono il 5% che hanno i risorse.
Le risorse,
Sì. E che dopo 18 anni
brava,
sono
dichiarati malati
dipende.
mentali,
Sì, sì.
una pensione
E,
500, basta, fine.
e che queste 5% sono in residenza,
Esatto,
però il 95% abitare ancora con la
per
famiglia
forza.
invece di...
Di avere una struttura.
Sì, sì.
E allora
per
tu
questo.
digli, ti
Sì,
hai detto?
sì.
Gliel'hai
No,
detto?
io devo dire
Che
adesso.
il mio sogno qual è? Di
Mhm.
comprare una
Struttura.
struttura perché
Mhm.
i genitori, il mamma e il papà dicono dopo di noi i nostri figli dove vanno?
Mm,
E allora io mi sono ripromesso con l'aiuto di Dio di
sì,
comprare una
una
struttura,
struttura.
tu gli spieghi in modo che
Sì, sì,
garantiremo la terapia gratuitamente, a prescindere se c'è questa legge o meno, che io
mm,
sto cercando di far votare.
sì,
E questa è la cosa, è la mia eredità.
sì, sì.
Così James dirà, è stato mio nonno.
See. So he's saying so this segues right into his dream, which is to build a structure, a physical structure. These children can go and live in a co-housing type unit. But a lot of the parents always say to him, but what happens if we die?
Hmm.
When we die?
Yeah.
You know, so the 95% who don't have this possibility of their child going, to a co-housing or a housing, that, what if they die tomorrow? Where does the child go? Well, they are considered insane by Italian law, and they're put into insane asylums, which is
Mm.
absolutely inhumane because
Yeah.
then, they're not living a good life after that. So, anyway, so his dream is to build this structure, and that is what he wants his grandson James to know as his legacy instead of the bad life.
I think that's really important to note because of this, because of Giampaolo, I think it sparked this interest for me to look further into different comparisons. And it wasn't just to highlight, you know, just alone what's happening in Italy, because honestly, this autism situation is a global issue, right? So I started looking at different countries, for example. So for example, France, they have a national autism strategy. And I'm sharing this because I feel like it's not a disconnected, isolated situation. It's a global situation, right? So in France, they committed, I think, about 340 million euros to lifelong ASD care. Adult services are still fragmented and underdeveloped. Okay, so this comes from foundationfrance.org. So things aren't, I think no one place is perfect. In Germany, they have adult diagnosis and vocational support offered by Autism Zentren Tübingen. I think I'm saying it wrong totally, but yes, but they offer these supports and national programs and rights. But of course, there's always gaps in between. In Japan, for example, early ASD diagnosis is accessible adult services are limited and fragmented again. Okay. And then community inclusion for adults remains underfunded. So kind of very different country, but similar points in situation. In Canada, there is adult supports to different program means and respites, and there are life planning aids that are available from different provinces, so from provincial autism societies, right? But again, it's not like one perfect pathway. And then I think in the USA, they offer adult healthcare transition guides, tickets to work to support employment. But I know there was an alarming gap about at least 700,000 people that are still on the wait list for that transition. So just very different situations, different countries, but again, all about autism in that regard. Yeah. So
Lei ha spiegato che non è un problema di solo Italia, è un problema
un po' di
nel
tutti,
mondo
universale.
universale purtroppo, e ha spiegato che in tutti i paesi che lei ha
Ha
trattato,
citato, sì.
allora, ha parlato di Francia, che loro hanno un po' più soldi per mettere dentro dei programmi, ma che ancora lì non c'è il supporto
La
che
consapevolezza che hanno bisogno,
sì,
certo, certo.
e che la stessa in Giappone. Anche in Canada è un po' meglio, però non tutti, non è un problema nel mondo,
In
non
Italia,
solo.
la regione Veneto, se una famiglia spende 5.000 euro,
Mm,
ipotesi al mese, la regione dà solo il 30%.
mm,
Quindi è
mm,
poco, è
mm.
poco.
Sì, sì. Yeah, he was saying that he's agreeing that it is a
Il
global
Veneto è
problem.
uno dei polmoni finanziari dell'Italia. Abbiamo un grande PIL, ci
Mm.
sono tante industrie, ci sono i soldi nel Veneto, ti
Ah,
proprio.
sì, sì.
Ma nonostante questo non si trovano o non vogliono trovare i soldi.
I see. He said it's also so it's a regional thing, like you were
hmm,
saying in Italy too. And he's saying, Veneto, which is where Venice is is a very wealthy province because
hmm,
they have lots of industry here. So, obviously tourism is going to be number one.
hmm.
And, there's a lot of tourists that are coming in and out. So there's a lot of money here. So when they say that they can't find the money, it's just well, it's not true, at the end of the day. And that it's really hard, because they're not really wanting to make a change. So hopefully this chat on Friday, you know, will show them, that we need to do something.
I look forward to the school that he's building here. And
Yeah.
maybe that's an example for other schools to come to as well. So and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
that's a really significant thing. And I want to emphasize here that, a lot of times we become interested in, certain conditions or issues or situations because we've experienced it or our family and friends, somebody close to us has experienced that. And I always say that, we don't necessarily have to have the same experience or need to be exposed to it to actually care about something, care about a cause or something else that somebody else is experiencing. It is always okay to, be empathetic and tune into that, look into it, do research, and to have better understanding, ask the questions, even though you might not know what to ask.
Yeah. I think if I can add to that just from what
Yeah.
I know of him personally is that even though like it wasn't a cause that was like in his family personally, I think it was just the fact that he grew up the way he grew up, like he's always had in his heart, the want to help children. And
Mm,
so, because, the life he lived was so hard, and as a child, experiencing that he looks at like the most vulnerable children in society and just wants to help them. So even though it's not, you know, from what I've seen in my perspective and having known him for 3 years, is that that is what drives him. Is it is personal in one way, but not like specific to autism, but specific to helping the most vulnerable children within the society.
And I think that's a sign of tremendous strength and power. And I think
Mhm.
it's something positive of hope, exactly what he says, his hope, right? And then demonstrating that, having that capacity to care for something beyond what is known to you or what you have experienced yourself. Yeah. And I think everybody can do that. Yeah. So
Lei ha detto che anche se autismo non è nella tua famiglia, e poi ho detto, però è una cosa dentro di te, perché tu hai vissuto una vita male da bambino, allora tu vuoi bene
ai
ai
bambini
bambini, a tutti i bambini, ma specificamente i bambini che sono più
deboli,
deboli, che hanno
meno
bisogno
protetti.
di più proteggio di tutti gli altri.
Sì,
Ho detto questo.
saremo brevi. Il palazzo di mia mamma, l'albergo, di
Mm.
fronte avevo la scuola dei bambini Down.
Mm.
Io ho vissuto con loro perché io ho visto la crescita, la loro e la mia. E ogni pomeriggio la mamma
Mm.
faceva le frittelle veneziane e io dicevo, mamma, sono in 30. E venivano a casa mia a mangiare le frittelle.
Ah,
E quindi questa cosa, questi bambini Down,
sì.
è sempre stata dentro di me.
Ah, sì,
Hai capito?
sì,
E
sì.
quindi è una cosa bella da raccontare, se hai voglia.
Sì, sì. So he said that when he was younger, there was actually around the corner from his mother's house, there was a small school for children with Down syndrome. And that his mother would bake, it's like a specific type of Venetian baking that is usually like around the time of Carnival. And that basically he would tell her, oh, there's 30 children, and that they would then invite all of these children over and they could eat with
mm,
them. So he
that's
said that he felt very close to, wanting to protect these all types of children, but like he felt very close to.
Digli, l'altro giorno siamo andati al funerale che è morto mio fratello e
Sì,
abbiamo visto un treno
sì.
pieno di bambini Down autistici. È stato Dio.
Sì.
Ah, questa è
Ok.
troppo bella raccontare.
Ok.
Gliel'hai detta?
No, no.
È
Awesome.
bellissimo. Sì,
Okay.
sì, digli, no.
So, okay,
yeah.
so sadly, his older brother passed away recently. And basically we're on the train to go to the funeral, and he's very angry, and having a lot of anxiety, obviously, and just really kind of like just negativity all around, and looking at sort of, his life and not feeling like he's accomplished the things maybe, and and maybe fear as well, fear. And so we're on the train, and the most precious thing happens. So basically we stop a few stops before Venice, and an entire school of children board the train, and they're all children with autism and Down syndrome. And he was so overwhelmed, and I said to him, I said, well, look at that. Is If that isn't a gift from God today, I don't know what is. And so he was, like, just overwhelmed, like emotional and grateful for that moment.
I'm a I'm a believer in life, sometimes when you're in a mode, you're feeling something or being caved in about something. I feel like suddenly it's like the universe is like, okay, we're gonna help you out a little bit and send you a message of hope. And what you just shared, thank you for sharing that. It actually gave me a flood of goosebumps in a positive way. I was like, I felt that power on Zoom. Okay, yeah, of the kids flooding in, just transforming you, right? So
Era una giornata triste, ma
Mm.
per il
Sì,
funerale, però mi ha dato un po' di serenità, di felicità vederli.
sì,
Li ho abbracciati perché uno dei ragazzi che li segue mi ha
sì,
riconosciuto.
sì, è vero. E ha fatto foto con te.
Sì,
Ok.
esatto,
Sì,
esatto.
sì. He said even though it was an extremely sad day, that there was just some type of peace in that moment, and that one of the workers with the children actually recognized him and had said thank you for all that he was doing. And they even took a photo together, and he just gave him a big hug, and he said, no, like, thank you for what you're doing. And it was just a very personally, I think it was just like a reminder of the path that he's on. You
yeah,
know, a
yeah,
reminder that the help is arriving and that
yeah.
he is able to do good. So
A nod to say keep going. And with
yeah.
that in mind, I'm gonna have one last question for Giampaolo, is that what does real strength look like to you today? And what message do you have for positive encouragement, yeah, empowerment?
Ok, lei ha detto, allora, cosa significa per te la vera forza oggi e quale messaggio positivo vorresti condividere?
Allora, la prima, dimmi. Cos'è?
Cosa significa per te la vera forza oggi?
Ah, ok. La vera forza oggi per me è avere Dio vicino a me, che mi dice quello che devo fare. E poi il messaggio che dobbiamo essere per gli altri, per chi ha bisogno di noi. Ecco, questa è la mia conclusione. Aiutare il prossimo, di chi ti chiede aiuto, e se non te lo chiede, lo devi dare lo stesso.
Mm.
Ecco, questa
Okay, so he said, the strength, the real strength today comes from God for him. And then the positive message that is that he, wants to help those who are coming after him. And scusa, sono perso.
è la prima, l'hai detta, deve
Sì,
mancare
sì,
la seconda.
sì.
Devi esserci per tutti, anche per chi...
Pinocchio's. Okay.
Ah,
And then that we have to help everybody, or he has to help everybody, even those who don't ask for his help.
anche se non chiedono aiuto, ma devi capirlo.
But you have to just understand and be present enough to understand.
I love that last point, that reaching out to help people that don't know that they need help. Okay. And I think that is so true. Oftentimes, things happen in life. You're just like, oh, call me if you need help, reach out to me if you need help. But the reality is sometimes when things are happening, people are going through situations, they're not gonna be like, oh, I can reach out for help. I need help, right? So that's exactly in alignment with what he has shared just now, being in tune to hear and listen and be empathetic and doing that extra reach out, right? Where you can, where it's possible, yeah.
Penso che questa è una significa tanto per lei, le piace tante cose ha detto, perché c'è tante persone che non posso chiedere.
È vero, ma devi tu capire che questa
Sì,
persona ha
sì,
bisogno di te.
sì, sì, lei è d'accordo. Ok.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you. Grazie a te
no, thank you with my heart. Yeah,
che mi hai
yeah.
dato
Thank
la
you.
voce, che
Yeah.
il Canada
Thank you
abbia
for
saputo
giving
di
me the
questa
book.
storia
Thank
e,
you that Canada gets to know my story.
Oh
e
yeah,
che
yeah, and Asia too, probably. So yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So maybe I don't know. So yeah,
E io vorrei dire
and young and old.
l'ultima cosa sintomatica, la vera, che il bene vince sul male.
Sì, sì. Okay, so
Yeah,
the last thing, yeah, good wins over you again.
absolutely. Good always outdoes evil, and That's exactly the path. And now we go into part two. And I want to highlight Gianna, okay, about your amazing work. And I wanted to ask you the question. This is your first documentary, and it's incredibly cinematic, okay? 'Cause I did get to watch it. So why did you choose that visual language for such a personal, real story? It was also shown in Berlinale EFM recently, right? Maybe you can share that too as well. Yeah, before you dive in.
Yeah. So So no, I didn't actually show it at Berlinale
Yeah.
because it's not done yet,
Okay.
and so I was just I was actually there with a different project, but I was still trying to meet people to see if I could find some partners on the documentary. But
Yeah.
yes, it is my first one.
Yeah.
And basically, like, I always envisioned the documentary to be in black and white.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, when you say that, people at the beginning might not always be on board. And so the idea had been discouraged a little bit. But I had like a very incredibly close team.
Mm.
So I had a cinematographer, Daniel Everett Locke, a sound and VFX person, Joel Vargesi, and a composer, Tilo Schaller. And that was like sort of our core kind of group. And like they really championed and pushed me towards having the confidence to commit fully. This is going to be in black and white. And they really supported me, you know, through that because I have like a specific vision of why. And for me, the black and white really reflects how society often views crime, which is like in a very stark term, like it's black and white, like it is or it isn't.
Hmm.
And we tend to overlook the human being, the person that
Yeah.
is behind this maybe behavior. And at the same time, I really wanted to evoke the Venice that Giampaolo lived in, you know, which is gritty, raw, full of contradictions, and just kind of strip away the color and focus more deeply on his story and who he is, and um, and on his face, because you know there's an emotional truth for each moment. And so I wanted to really invite the audience to sit with him, to see him, you know, not just as a figure of like of his criminal past, but as a full human being, and all that that entails. I'm sure that you noticed that there are some kind of funny moments in the documentary, as
Yeah.
well as
Yeah.
obviously quite
I love
serious moments.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show him as a full human being and not, okay, he's this, you know, criminal, and we're going to tell this specifically criminal, you know, true crime story.
Yeah.
You know, was trying to do something very human.
It was very well captured because I felt everything that you had shared. And I think, in my personal opinion, I think the black and white was perfect because that's exactly it. A really stark contrast from the life before and here now. And I think what was really important that, I also saw certain scenes and cuts and stuff like that, and I could feel the tender moments that he had when he
Hmm.
was reflecting about stuff. So that was very sincere. And I like how there were scenes where you were able to stay in the moment. So I had to stay in to ride the emotions with Giampaolo in that moment. Even though I never experienced his life or, saw or did the things that he did. But yeah, so I felt that and I think it was really incredible. Yeah. Um, but yeah, if you want to yeah.
So che è agitato e dopo che c'era i momenti dove lei ha sentito che lei era il momento con te. che ha significato tanto e che
È stata una sofferenza per me,
non so.
però poi...
Said it was unfortunately a bit of suffering for him. In the way that
I dialoghi con mio figlio, i luoghi dove siamo andati,
some
i
of
ricordi di mia
the
mamma
places that
di
we
prima.
went and some of the memories, like his mother in prison, it was a lot, you know.
I felt that too because I mean, again, while I'm not him, but to go back to experience and then I think back different situations or places where I had to step back and reface certain situations kind of thing, like yeah, it's not an easy situation to be. And that goes back to again, this whole journey about a man not living in his shadows and then staying there because he came out of prison, but choosing a light path, a path of light, kind of thing. So stepping to it. And I think that transcends to exactly the black and white filming of this documentary. So he came out of the shadows from one chapter into this new chapter.
Mm. Interessante perché hai detto che significa bianco e nero perché tu andare dall'ombra alla luce. Sì. Ah,
Bellissimo. Cosa ha detto? Dalla
sì,
nuvola
sì, sì, cosa?
Digli,
Nome del tuo
il
quarto
quarto
libro.
libro. Mamma mia, che bello.
So his fourth book is actually called Out of the Shadows into the
Okay, I
Light.
totally didn't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I'm intuitive, right? Yeah.
Mamma mia, che
So, yeah.
bello.
sì, sì,
Wow.
Dall'ombra alla luce.
sì, sì.
Well, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. The
No,
inspiration.
thank you. Thank you. It's
Inspiration?
in Asian culture, we have a thing we call fate. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you walk on the street, there's so many people, right? But you don't meet them. You pass
Yeah.
by. But then sometimes, maybe like for example, I had an incident where I ran into a friend that I haven't seen for years. But that friend was lining up at a coffee shop at a precise time. It took me to come out, walk halfway, forget my keys, something, go back home, come back out again, forget something, go back, and then to walk and decide still I'm gonna go to the coffee shop to line up so that I can line up precisely right behind her and then look up and say, oh my God, I haven't seen you for years, right? So I think that's how chance meeting happens, like sometimes things are by fate to happen and repeatedly this happens in life. It's not just about meeting people, but I feel, I know things happen for a reason. Yeah.
La mia storia? Sorry.
Lei ha detto che c'è destino e sua cultura che veramente loro tieni
Sì,
di questo
è vero.
destino e che tu puoi essere in strada. E c'è tanta gente che non ti vista, non ti fa incontro con, ma nella giornata tu puoi incontrare con qualcuno che tu hai pensato di, ma che loro non devi essere lì,
Certo.
ma sono lì.
Sì.
E che tu fai l'incontro con loro, ma perché? E che questo è successo in tutta la vita, non solo incontro in strada, ma anche in questo momento specifico che parliamo della stessa cosa, che questo è il nome del tuo libro e che lei poi ha detto questo perché ho spiegato del docufilm e che lei ha visto questo in docufilm. Ma direi siamo sulla stessa...
Stessa
Ah,
onda.
sì, sì,
Digli che la mia storia non è finita qui.
sì, lo so.
Perché c'è il secondo, il terzo, poi sarà il quarto e il quinto libro
Mm.
per chiudere la mia storia. Quindi lei dovrà ancora leggere tanto, tanto, tanto.
So he said that basically his story doesn't end here and that he's also written, or he's in the middle of writing the fourth book, which has
Yeah.
that title.
Yeah.
And that he will be also writing a fifth book, and so he's going to be sending you lots of material to read.
Okay. Good job. Please, Please. I look forward to it. Yeah. So
Mhm.
now, Jana, what was the most significant moment during filming? Something that stayed with you long after the camera stopped rolling? And was there any funny or crazy situations that came up? Yeah.
Yeah, so okay. So I will say, like, with the documentary,
Yeah.
like every day and every moment sort of stays with you because you are stepping into somebody's real life, unlike, making a narrative film where there isn't that same type of weight or like responsibility. But if I have to choose like one moment in
Mhm.
particular, um, it would probably be the hardest moment on the film. And basically, so we were filming on the Brenta River, and it is the site of a tragic triple homicide, which took place in 1990, of which Giampaolo participated in. And it was already like this very heavy moment. He had not obviously been back there since 1990.
Mhm.
And his son, Armando, who was not supposed to be in that scene that day, he kind of just saw it happening and just quietly like walked in a way that was like comforting and supportive, and but it was also tragic, beautiful, and like extremely human
Mhm.
moment between a father and a son. And I think when I think back to that moment, I just felt like our whole team felt that in that moment. And it kind of did remind us like, yeah, the story is not past, you
Mhm.
know? It's a story that continues. It's about real people who are really living, who are,
Really.
it's this whole idea of capturing a human in full invulnerability in these moments. And I would say the weight of that day is something that I carry with me in as a reminder, uh, as a documentarian too, of things that can just happen in a moment,
Yeah.
but
Letting
things that
trust unfold.
might have helped them also in a moment, might have helped them more towards, um, healing
Mhm.
at the end, even though it was very hard. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
sometimes you are acting as more than a journalist or as more than a chronicle of life, but like your responsibility in that moment is more,
And
is
this
big.
relates to that balance of telling the truth while trying to balance the protection and the dignity of the subject, right? Which
Right.
is,
Yeah, exactly. That's something that you balance like 100% of the time. Like it's, your job as a director is to tell the truth, but where is the line of that truth? Can you do that respectfully? Because he gave me something special. He gave me access to his life,
Mhm.
to his memories, his regrets, his emotions, his way of being,
Mhm.
uh, past, present, and future. Like a full access that, you know, not everyone gets. And that puts that responsibility even bigger because, um, just because you have that access, you can't exploit that access. You know what I mean? And
Exactly, yeah.
so, like, you have this responsibility for truth, but you have to do it with care, with honesty, with collaboration, because every day was a collaboration between us. It wasn't, this is his life. I can't decide for him his own life, right? I
Yeah.
sure can ask him questions and say I want to speak about a specific subject matter, but in that, another way that kind of dealt with that was the fact that it isn't a traditional, the documentary isn't traditional in the sense of like, I'm interviewing him,
Yeah.
you know, and that I'm just asking him questions. Instead, it was set up as scenes. So, you know, there are scenes with his twin brother, there are scenes with his son, there are scenes with other family members, other friends, ex-gang members, ex-police.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Sorry.
and oh, that's okay. And basically, you know, trying to, you know, find that balance that is not painful, but like in collaboration, essentially.
Um, I wanted to ask you, what I think what was the most beautiful moment that you found, you know, when you were shooting? How long was the shoot?
Okay, so we had sort of three separate shoots. So the cinematographer Daniel and I shot an initial kind of 1 week shoot in December 2022, which allowed us to kind of make like a teaser trailer and then present that to investors. And we already knew who we were going to present it to. So a decision was able to be made quite quickly. And then we were able to enter production in February 2023 for approximately 1 month. But then we didn't quite get everything because, as you know, like when you're making a documentary and making it in the specific way that we were trying to make it, it's really hard, like to have everything, like you have to almost do post-production and the editing and really sometimes find that arc and that story within the edit. And so as we were going along editing, I found that, you know, there's pieces we need to do another shoot.
Yeah.
And so, you know, called the team back again in June 2023 for another week and a half, I think it was, maybe, yeah, a week and a half. And so basically we had those three main shoots, and then after that we had to find archive newspapers and things like that. So and then really focus on the edit because we had like so many hours of shooting. I think if there was one like kind of special moment, maybe it was probably the end of the film, which I don't really want to give away the ending.
Oh, yeah.
But
We don't.
but it was interesting because we had actually planned a different ending for the film. And so the ending that you saw was not at all planned. It was just like, we thought that that would be, you know, maybe at the beginning or, you know, but then he really is looking, you know, and telling us specific, like something very specific. And so that ended up being just a very simple ending to the film instead of the very kind of complex, let's, you know, shoot this thing that's in a studio that has all this crazy setup. But instead, it was just a very simple, but beautiful and human moment, you know. And so I think that just finding that moment by accident was probably something that also stands out.
I think that's really important just to let things unfold, come
Mhm.
on its own, and then having maybe a little bit less expectations in terms of you know, dictating what it should be like kind of thing. And like I think that yeah, that's documentary filmmaking, right? So I think that's it's very quiet, it's very still, but it's very powerful when you can capture what you can capture in those moments. I wanted to ask you, what message would you want to give to young female filmmakers who want to tell hard, meaningful stories but are afraid to start?
Ah, so I guess like to young female filmmakers, I would say like just take the first step um, and move into the fear. So like don't wait for fear to disappear for you to be ready because that day doesn't come. There is a fear, you know, and it will just be there. Um, and instead just walk into it, walk towards it one step at a time. Because I'll be really honest, like the beginning of any filmmaker's career is hard, is
Yeah.
difficult, but a female is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And I mean, you will work 10 times harder than everybody else just to be seen, just to
Yeah.
be heard. And I don't want that to be a word of discouragement. It means that, you know, that you should be more proud of your achievement when you get there, you know. And for me personally, I made a promise to myself
Mm.
that I can do this. I can do this. And every day I woke up and I reminded myself of that promise and I shaped my day around it. And I think that women, we are resilient,
Yeah.
we
We
are
are.
compassionate, and we are
Yeah.
leaders.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I could do this coming from a place that's as far from Hollywood as one can imagine, then, you know, and I didn't have any connections in the film industry, absolutely none, you know, but I was very fortunate to have a family who supported this wild vision that I had to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that if I could do it from, you know, my small town in Alberta, I feel like anybody can. And I really want them to know that, like, that there have been others before and we are here for them. And so, you know, they might not know me, but look me up on social media and DM me because I will be here.
Okay, so
And
everybody go to Gianna and
ah,
Giampaolo. So that's
well,
a that's such a strong share, and I think it's so empowering because it's so true. And you talk about being a female filmmaker path, I think it's already struggling and challenging. It's sometimes I don't know, maybe just generally in life, you almost feel like you have to try to prove yourself a little bit harder, depending on certain situations and whatnot, kind of thing. But I like to focus and bring to the attention to mentorships, how we can be each other's mentor, whether you're a man to a woman, woman to a man, and likewise back and forth. And whether you're a more senior person on the job and somebody more junior, so to speak. I think there's stuff to take away and stuff to learn from. And I think it that advice that you gave, just staying steadily focusing, just like the camera with steady cam. You're gonna focus
yeah.
on your subject, okay? And then you're gonna zoom in slowly and still capture along the pathway, no matter what else is storming on the side. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, and I think that's so important. Just keep going and not be afraid. So with that, I wanted to throw a question back out to the audience before we end our talk today. It was a very long topic of it's very important, very necessary with all these beautiful, stories that were shared. So we often ask what kind of world we want to leave behind, okay? But what if the real question is, what kind of world are we building right now? Especially for those who've never had a voice or never seen a door open and never been cast in their own story. What does that world look like? you know kind of just want the audience to really think about that. And I wanted to quickly touch on, where can we get a copy of the book that you
Oh,
were sharing?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So right now, the book is in Italian only. and is available in Italy only right now.
Okay.
But it's been translated into English, and it's just going through the editing process right now. And
Yeah.
so we are hoping to release it before the end of the year in Canada and the US,
Okay.
and hopefully also in the UK. And it'll be released on Amazon. So hoping that
Per gli italiani canadesi, però, scusa, falli vedere.
oh yeah,
No?
he says for the Italo Canadians, they can find it also on Amazon in
Okay.
Italian.
Okay.
No?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Molto di
So
tutti, no?
yeah, so I'll be sharing those links on our Facebook page and across social medias. And if anybody has missed this talk, it will be uploaded and shared, so the video will be available. And I just want to say thank you so much, Giampaolo. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for you. And thank you, Gianna, for being here and translating and having the patience and for Giampaolo to express, even though I made him cry 2 times. Yeah. So, yeah. And thank you. Yeah. Yeah. For the beautiful shares. And I learned so much too as well. And let's continue to build this path, right? And hopefully there are more support of for autism to close those global gaps, so that it's a lifelong continuity, so that to ensure autism is viewed as a lifelong condition, not something that ends right at 18 years old, so that we continue to look for seamless transitions, right, from as a child going into an adulthood, right, and to understanding that we need to diversify adult services because you need to fund specific diagnostic clinics, programs, vocational training, and support living in that perspective, and develop tools equivalents for adults, and also to reduce waitlist and regional inequity. I'm not just talking about Italy. I'm talking about globally, right? And so the service waitlist, that's life changing, right? And then prioritize underserved areas. And I think this also transcends to, like boosting employment and community integration, how to promote that, in different pathways and patterns. And then really to empower the families and individuals, because consistently across the globe, I see as I was doing the research for autism, all the care, a huge amount of the care comes from families, right? So then you need to provide the care and the training and maybe financial support for the caregivers, right? To train the individuals, caregivers, and the self-efficacy skills at an early stage. And most importantly, I think to continuously raise awareness and drive research, and really invest in that to study the ASD outcomes so that you can create something that's actually culturally relevant, because every country, every place, every location is different. Yeah. So that's it. So thank you very much to both of you.
Grazie, grazie a te.
And
The rest of it late evening. I appreciate your time, and I wish you a beautiful start of a brand new week as well.
And I just wanted to shout out to my dad.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day, Papa Bear. And also, it's my sister's birthday, so I wanted to say happy birthday.
Okay. Happy Father's Day and happy birthday to your sister, to your dad, and thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank
Ciao
you.
Paolo, ciao Romano, ciao
Yeah.
Riccardo,
Yeah.
e ciao Pierina, ciao ciao. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.